Ontario's new online gambling market launched at midnight.
For more on what this means for consumers, we go live now to BNN's David George-Cosh outside the Rogers Centre. David, thank you so much for joining us to chat about this. So this is a big announcement, but what is it going to mean for the brick and mortar casinos in the province?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting time for those brick and mortar casinos. Obviously, it's a little too early for people to be lining up for the home opener for the Blue Jays this Friday, but if you are interested on betting on that game, you can do so legally now here in Ontario. Ontario is now the first province in Canada to legalize private online gambling. That's both sports and casino gambling here in Ontario, as well as the second largest market in North America outside of New York. This is expected to generate about 1,300 jobs here in the province, as well as about up to $1 billion in revenue for the provincial government. Nearly 24 operators are now able to sell those kind of gambling services to people here in Ontario. Of course, what's really interesting, this is the dawn of a new regulated market, and similar to what we've seen here in cannabis, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of excitement here, but in terms of getting that message out to customers and possible consumers, that's going to be very interesting. There's still some regulations there. A lot of these outfits aren't able to necessarily promote or offer free incentives like a free $100 bet like we see in the States. Here in Ontario, what we've noticed is a lot of these outfits ranging from BetMGM, DraftKings, they're enlisting and endorsing celebrities ranging from Wayne Gretzky to Eric Lindros to really ensure that they're able to stick out from the rest of the pack in terms of getting people interested in that kind of betting service.
Yeah, we've seen those ads. I think we're even running on CB24 here, David. I'm curious about the connections or the tentacles to sort of outside of Ontario or Canada. Are all of these iGaming, these couple dozen that you're mentioning, David, are they all must be Ontario-based businesses, and what are their connections? Because when I see BetMGM, I instantly think of the massive conglomerate out of Vegas.
And you're right, MGM is that conglomerate in Vegas that has a presence here in Ontario. Penn National Gaming, they bought the Score for $2 billion about a year ago to get that presence here in Ontario. There's operators from the UK, the US, and some local ones as well. And Ontario is really the test ground, I think, for the rest of the country, where other provinces will be looking at what exactly is Ontario doing, what is working, what isn't, for them to essentially have their own regulated gambling service for online betting in those respective provinces. So Ontario's a bit of a test case, but it's going to be interesting to see exactly how this one plays out for the rest of the year.
All right. And David, can you just talk a bit about the taxes? Because I know now that these private operators will need to register and pay tax, but it won't be as much as what brick and mortar casinos pay.
Yeah, that's right. Early expectations are that the taxes generated by these gambling outfits will yield about $800 million to $1 billion in revenue for the province. Now, that is a fraction of the illicit gambling that already exists for illegal bookkeepers, which are tied to organized crime, as well as offshore betting. That ranges from about $10 billion annually to $4 billion, respectively. So getting some of that money back into the legal sector here is really what this announcement is all about. Making sure that the illicit operators aren't getting their share of the pie, and it's going more towards regulated services that in turn will essentially download some of those taxes onto the province for province to spend on, essentially whatever they want.
Absolutely. And David, it's interesting. I know that you really were deep in the cannabis file when that sort of happened a few years ago. Is there any comparison to this in terms of, a lot of what happened in the cannabis market was some of the smaller players were gobbled up quite quickly by the bigger players here. Is there an expectation that that could happen on this market as well, that the big guys could see the success of some maybe smaller ones and start swallowing them up and merge them?
Yeah, Nick, it's hard to speculate specifically about like the future of M&A consolidation there. But to your point, there was a lot of hype in the cannabis space. There's a lot of hype in the online gambling space. There's a lot of operators there, and they're all trying to differentiate themselves from each other. That's going to be a challenging thing to do, especially when you're spending millions getting the folks of Wayne Gretzky to be part of your brand. So if that doesn't necessarily work out, then it's more than likely that we'll see a lot of consolidation, a lot of this roll-ups of bigger players like those MGMs, like those DraftKings, to essentially be the most, to attain the most dominant betting platform here in the province going forward.
Okay, BNN's David George-Cosh outside the Rogers Centre this afternoon. Thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys.